This is All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network, a collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. And I'm your host, Christine Lee. Taking a look at our top stories, Bitcoin had a 12.6 drop in its mining difficulty, its fourth largest negative adjustment since 2012, likely due to power outages in China weeks ago. Coinciding with the difficulty adjustment, Bitcoin's Taproot update, which aims to make Bitcoin multi-signature transactions cheaper and more private. And they've finally begun its speedy trial. Miners have 3 months to signal their support. Meanwhile, Ether, the native cryptocurrency of the Ethereum blockchain, surging today to a new record price of over $3,300, triggering debate over a flippening, that is, a possible event in the future when Ethereum surpasses Bitcoin in value. Edward Moya, senior market analyst for the brokerage Oanda, going so far as saying Bitcoin is riding the coattails of Ethereum. And high-profile Bitcoin critics are firing shots. Berkshire Hathaway Vice Chair Charlie Munger saying Bitcoin's success is disgusting during the company's annual meeting Saturday, and comedian Bill Maher ripping BTC for its energy consumption and users for believing in digital cash. But success is success, and Wall Street is taking note. S&P Dow Jones Indices launching its first 3 cryptocurrency indexes today, according to documents reviewed by CoinDesk. Ticker symbols had been assigned for Bitcoin, Ether, and a mega cap combo of the two. Separately, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange's Micro Bitcoin Futures product began trading today, giving investors the chance to buy fractions of Bitcoin futures contracts. So checking in on Bitcoin right now, the CoinDesk Bitcoin Price XBX Index is currently trading at $57,000, just under $800 over the past 24 hours. Bitcoin has been climbing about 1.6%. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
All right, Bitcoin held $56,000 support during the weekend and is now inching towards $60,000 resistance on the end there. The relative strength indicator on this bottom chart here is now overbought on the hourly chart, although it is not as extreme as it was in May 1st or April 14th, which preceded price declines. But on the daily chart, Bitcoin is above the 50-day and 100-day moving averages and is not yet overbought. Slowing momentum on the weekly chart, however, suggests buyers are still taking profit on rallies. And joining us now to discuss is Simplified Chief Strategist and Portfolio Manager Michael Green. Welcome, Michael.
Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. All right, so would love to get your near and long-term outlook on Bitcoin right now. We seem to be in this 56 to 60 range right now.
So I got to be honest with you, I don't have a very strong view about the immediate price action on Bitcoin. I think that it's an interesting speculative asset that a lot of institutions and retail individuals have adopted. If there continue to be more buyers than sellers, you'll see the price rise.
All right, well, let's hone in on the technology. The Bitcoin network is activating its Taproot update. It's a slow process. Ether is also updating its network to a proof-of-stake consensus mechanism. The price is hitting new highs as we speak for ETH. Is a flippening possible?
Well, I think it's certainly possible. I mean, I think a big part of the question that you have to ask yourself is about the end use of each of the two products, right? So if you think about Ethereum, we're seeing an extraordinary growth in terms of the use of smart contracts and interest in the kind of open source dynamics on that. You're seeing a lot of test cases that are being introduced in terms of new products, et cetera. Bitcoin, I don't see the same growth in the usage, but that could be a function of we're at a relative pause in terms of the rolling out. So from my perspective, a flippening would make perfect sense, but doesn't necessarily have to happen.
Okay. And we also heard from Charlie Munger over the weekend saying Bitcoin success is disgusting, and comedian Bill Maher ranting that Bitcoin is like Tinkerbell's light. Its power source is based solely on enough children believing in it. We'd love to get your reaction on those comments. I think you may have muted yourself.
Sorry, I apologize for that. I've got a vacuum cleaner that apparently just went off upstairs. The underlying character of it being disgusting, et cetera, or that it being relying on Tinkerbell type power, generally is true for any asset that doesn't have an embedded cash flow characteristic to it, right? So what Munger is highlighting, in my view, is that the dynamics of the success of a product that doesn't appear to offer a significant tangible benefit to individuals is concerning and indicative of a speculative dynamic. I think the exact same thing is being said by Bill Maher. I'm not at all surprised that the narrative in the mainstream media and across the professional investor space is growing increasingly skeptical of Bitcoin. Part of that, I would just highlight that as the price gains slow, other narratives begin to dominate, and as competing assets like Ethereum potentially come forward, you can see an element of concern creeping into the narrative.
Okay, but yet there are more institutions like the S&P Dow Jones Indices, and with its new crypto indexes, and CME Group with its micro Bitcoin features, they're trying to capitalize on Bitcoin's success. So where do you see Bitcoin's future headed?
Well, I think that you just hit on the really important component. So what we're seeing within the institutional space is the need to develop products and strategies and tools that allow people to have a responsible proportion of their portfolio invested in products like cryptocurrencies, whether those are Bitcoin or Ethereum. At Simplify, we're actually working towards the development of products that allow advisors in a tax-efficient way to maintain small exposure to these speculative assets, whether that's Ethereum or Bitcoin or other components and portfolios that are very difficult for institutional managers to hold in small proportions. In general, I think that has been much of the innovation that's happened in the Bitcoin space, is that you've seen the question of custody increasingly answered. If you're an institutional investor, you will often invest in assets that you don't know whether they're going up or down. Right? If you knew in advance that they were going up, you'd buy more of them, right? What you are very uncomfortable investing in as an institutional investor is something that you're not sure that you actually own it. And so the dynamics around the Mt. Gox hack or other events that have led to uncertainty as to what you would actually own from an institutional standpoint, that I think stood in the way of adoption of Bitcoin for an extended period of time. As we've begun to address that through the custody channel, the developments on the custody channel, you've seen exactly as I referred to at the start, more buyers begin to emerge with more assets to allocate into the space. Again, whether that's good or bad in terms of the choice of assets that they buy is uncertain, but there is unquestioned benefit to the development around superior custody dynamics.
So is your firm looking at, if you're looking at Bitcoin exposure, are you looking at Bitcoin trusts or buying it directly? And what kind of allocation are you advising your clients?
Well, one of the things that you hear all the time from people is you should just have a 1% allocation to Bitcoin. Unfortunately, that's really hard for particularly a professional advisor to maintain in a portfolio when you have an asset that is volatile as Bitcoin. Imagine you buy 1% in your portfolio or in your client's portfolio and the price doubles, which sounds fantastic from the perspective of the end customer, but you now actually have a question, do I sell the Bitcoin to reduce it in the portfolio? The ability to manage that exposure at small size for the professional investor is really where we see the opportunity to improve the dynamic. And again, whether that's Bitcoin and done through a Bitcoin trust or whether that's through an ETF type framework, our firm offers ETFs. The prospect of directly offering Bitcoin exposure is still limited within the United States in security form. But it does seem that certainly that is the direction that cryptocurrencies are heading.
Okay. Michael, thanks for weighing in and joining us on the show this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Simplify Chief Strategist and Portfolio Manager Michael Green. Coming up, should the Bitcoin narrative be renewed? My next guest thinks it does.
We are witnessing the greatest paradigm shift in finance in modern history. Join thousands of newsmakers and influencers talking the future of money in a live virtual experience. Consensus by CoinDesk. Register today.
Welcome back. My next guest says Bitcoin's narrative needs to be renewed in his latest essay in praise of Bitcoin. Joining us now to discuss is Ben Hunt, co-founder and chief investment officer at Second Foundation Partners. Welcome, Ben, to the show.
Thanks, Christine. Great to be here.
Good to have you. All right. So you say Bitcoin is good art. And at first I thought you meant Bitcoin is art in the sense that artwork has value because people think it has value, but you actually mean much more than that. Maybe you could explain.
Well, I do actually mean what you said. So it has value because it inspires people. It has value because it's elegant and cool. It's what good art does throughout the course of time. Right? It has all of those attributes, and what it doesn't have, as I think as Mike was saying earlier, is, it's not a representation of ownership and cash flows of some real world company. It's a very different thing. It's an idea. It inspires an identity, and that's what I think we're losing today.
Yeah, we have it up here, part of your essay. Bitcoin has been an authentic expression of identity, a positive identity of autonomy, entrepreneurialism, and resistance in the nudging state and nudging oligarchy. Maybe you can unpack a bit, what do you mean by nudging state and how this art narrative fits in with that?
Sure. Well, the state today, governments, right? With some exceptions, so let me talk about the United States government. Let me talk about Western European governments. Let me talk about Japan. These governments are not, I'll say, engaged in oppressive techniques of jackbooted, knocking down your door. The attitude around Bitcoin is not going to be to ban it. It's not going to be to outlaw it. It's going to be to nudge us into an idea of Bitcoin, a use of Bitcoin that works for the government, right? That's what I see happening. I don't see the risk to Bitcoin of it being banned or outlawed. No, quite the contrary. I think you're going to be sold Bitcoin, morning, noon, and night. I think you're going to be encouraged to buy Bitcoin. Except it's not going to be Bitcoin, right? It's going to be Bitcoin, and I'm making these jazz hands for it, right? It's going to be a very, Treasury compliant, Wall Street flow appropriate instantiation of Bitcoin. There'll be a casino chip representing the price of Bitcoin, like those, CME micro futures you were talking about earlier. Right? Yeah. It's going to be a day-glow orange painted version of Bitcoin, like you would get if you've got it in a hosted wallet somewhere, so that Treasury can track it just fine. Thank you very much. What I think is lost in all this is that identity that I was describing earlier. To me, it's less of a concern, frankly, about Bitcoin, the thing, as it is about Bitcoiners, about the crypto community. That's my interest here, because I've never met a community that had, what I was describing earlier, entrepreneurialism, a sense of autonomy, a sense of resistance, really important things, I think, in this world that I think get lost as the narrative of Bitcoin, the story of Bitcoin, is recast as Bitcoin.
Right. Well, you also write in your essay that because what made Bitcoin special in the first place is nearly lost, and what remains is a false and constructed narrative that exists in service to Wall Street and Washington rather than in resistance. So that's what you mean by, we become fixated on the price, and we have these CME futures, we have the indices, and the whole purpose behind Bitcoin gets lost. Is that what you were getting at? And that the U.S. Treasury becomes this all-seeing eye in the meantime that kind of removes what Bitcoin was supposed to become, which was something that would allow people to transact without middlemen, without government censorship.
means a lot of things to a lot of people, right? And I'm not saying that you're a bad person if your major concern is number go up, right? You're not. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you're working at CME or Morgan Stanley or whatever, and you're looking to try to create a product around Bitcoin to encourage flow and assets. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying we've lost something, if that's all it is. And I think what we've lost is that sense of autonomy and resistance to be more than just another table at the Wall Street casino. That's what I think we're losing. But I think there's a critical mass of people for who are still interested in regaining that. And that's why I was writing the note.
So you say that the Bitcoin narrative has to be removed. You write that we don't have to tell a story of price. We don't have to tell a story of apocalypse. We don't have to scold or educate. We can tell an old story of autonomy of mind and generosity of spirit within a new context of Bitcoin and crypto. How do you see that proceeding in the past? And I read some of the critics of your paper. They were concerned that the enthusiasm of the Bitcoin community compared to is the Bitcoin enthusiasm different from other expressions of identity that sometimes rub people the wrong way and are sometimes weaponized against non-group members like MAGA, Antifa, or even extreme Second Amendment rights groups?
I think it is. I think the identity, like I say, in that Bitcoin community is one of inclusiveness, is one of optimism, and it is one of personal autonomy of mind. And I think that what we're losing, again, and I think what we can regain is to, I'll say, call things by their proper names, right? Yeah. That when a new product is launched on Wall Street, whatever notion of autonomy and independence and resistance you may have had from participating in Bitcoin, it all goes away in these products, right? That's lost. And that's fine, right? If what you want, I want something in my portfolio that'll be, a quote unquote store of value against dollar debasement, right? Or that's one of the Wall Street stories, right? And that's fine. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that what we're losing in that case is that sense of community and trying to achieve something more than making more money in our portfolio.
Well, Ben, it's a good read, and I encourage people to go online and search for In Praise of Bitcoin. Thanks, Ben, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate it.
All right, that was co-founder and chief investment officer at Second Foundation Partners, Ben Hunt. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.